Good morning. I just want to welcome everyone to our webinar today, Transforming Sitting into Standing. We're just admitting people into the waiting room. We just have a few more folks. So thank you for joining me today from wherever you're at. Sure do appreciate your time and your energy today to have a look at what we're going to examine, gait from a different perspective. And before we even get started, I just want to say especially a gratitude of thanks for all of those who had heard about my little mishap and not able to present a previous webinar. So I'm glad you could rejoin me again for this one. So I'm doing well, exceptionally well, in fact. So thank you so much for your prayers, your offering, your good vibes, your energy. I believe all in that, and I have really taken it in and absolutely doing well. Good. All right, so I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, I'm Carol Montgomery, and welcome to our webinar for Gait for Wild Human Potential. And particularly, we're going to look at what does the pattern of sitting, what can we do in sitting that can translate not only to standing but into walking. So I'm going to start off the video for about an hour or so, and then Cynthia Allen is going to join me after that for about 20 minutes, and we'll talk a little bit about our upcoming class called Gait for Wild Human Potential, our first time that we will be offering it online. And one of the things that I'm going to delve in a little deeper into this webinar is one of the components that is embedded in Integral Human Gait, which is a theory with Cynthia and I have brought into existence and given birth to, and we want to share with you some of these a piece of that, I should say, of this critical way of organizing your thoughts and looking at gait from a different perspective. So I'm going to go ahead and get started right away. I'm going to start first with sharing my screen. I think we have enough bandwidth so that you should be able to keep yourself on the video, and I think you've already been muted. Cynthia's in the background, so she'll be able to tell me if there's anything that we need to adjust or change. So if she comes on, don't be surprised by that. So let's start first by sharing my screen. All right. And so I just want to confirm. There we go. All right. So here we go. So one of the things that we're doing today is we're taking a look about what's going on here in sitting and what can lead us here into taking this step and walking out. Now, there is a movement pattern that is consistently happening throughout this stage, and it repeats itself when we're standing and taking a step. The same pattern is occurring, but just in different positions. So if you can know the pattern first, and you can have that awareness and improve the elements, or what we would call gaits, G-A-T-E-S, within gait, you improve the gaits within that pattern, then walking becomes much more than just moving us around. Walking, or this ability, as you see this little fella here or this young lady here, each one of those pictures shows a moment in time where they each are standing on one leg. We call that mid stance for milliseconds. And in this phase here of mid stance, the movement pattern that is organized to make that happen is critical, not just for moving us out into the world, but is foundational for being able to balance on one leg, to be able to carry, to skip, to hop, to climb stairs. So the point from the learning how to sit well as a young baby happens about 6 months, and it takes somewhere another 5, maybe 7 months just to get to this stage. So the movement pattern is absolutely well developed. So most of you took the assessment. It was almost 200 people. And I want to thank you for that, first of all, because it gives me a lot of information about the audience that I am working with. I do that assessment in present time in the clinic where I work, because it starts to give me some information, and I want to impart to you what would it give you as a professional, healthcare, yoga specialist, instructor, teacher, Pilates, even personal training. The imprint can give us a lot of valuable information, and I want to start to answer the question, what does it mean? And so one of the main things I had you do is just, if you were in that seated position, where would you land? Would you land more on your sit bone, or to the right of it, to the left of it, or equally on both? And the reason why we want to know that is because sitting comes before walking. In your sit bones, the base of your pelvis are your first feet. So how well you move across the middle and navigate your sit bones, whether it be from side to side, forward or back, or on a diagonal, is super critical for this process of being able to move out and forward on two legs. But I also asked you, what was your standing footprint like? Okay? So your standing footprint. When you look over here on this image, you can see that the right side of the image of the foot has more depth to it. It has more surface area of contact. So this person would more than likely be shifted their weight or bearing their weight onto that foot. That's what most people would say. But in this webinar today, I want to take it a little further than that. I want to go a little deeper. I want to expand not just your information, but your knowledge base. Because this is not just about imparting information to you. This is about increasing your knowledge, and we know that when we have knowledge, it gives us choice. In knowledge, we can access this inner wisdom that's within us that organically can happen. So we influence using the information that we have and be able to take it into some kind of functional experience for us. So the imprint, where you started, was real important. So that may be important to understand because the nervous system is absolutely counting on, listening to, and responding to these imprints. Now, I must admit, and humbly so, one of the most profound things I ever learned was this right here, that I've been a therapist for 35 years and somatic practitioner since 2001. And to realize that I have no control is quite astounding. And in fact, when I first made that realization, it was like, oh my gosh, you've got to be kidding. But it was not just a Debbie Downer. There was hope in that because I began to understand through this somatic education journey that I went on. And I've been through a lot of physical pain, neurological dysfunction. And I'm hopeful because I understood that the nervous system also gave me a message. It's not that you're right, I don't have control, but the nervous system says, girl, you've got a lot of influence. You've got a lot of influence. So I want to share with you how the nervous system is reading your imprint, what that means to you as a practitioner, how it's going to help you choose if you're a Feldenkrais practitioner, it may help you decide what lessons would this person need in order to make a shift. To what end? To change the imprint. But we're changing more than the imprint. We're changing something so core within the nervous system so that something spontaneously can happen, so that we're not artificially making it happen. So let's take a little closer look at what the nervous system is listening to. Now, one of the things I asked you on your assessment, I said, what, if anything, does this word midline to you? Now, I got a lot of responses, and this morning I funneled them down, and these were basically the top ones. So most of us know midline, yes, it's something about the center and middle, and it could do something that divides us into a right side, into a left side. But there were some people that said, you know what, though, it also divides us from top to bottom. And the midline is such that even in this division, that there is a balance between the two halves. Okay? So that's what it meant to you, the audience who's viewing this today. Good information to me. Now, that may not be quite exactly what the nervous system is sorting on. Let me go a little deeper. So I asked you also a question, where do you perceive your midline? All right. And for the most of the people, it was very much like this little fella here. Now, we're used to mapping out certain areas from our skull to our nose. People talked about this breastbone coming down the center, through the navel, through the pubic bone, through the pelvic floor, that space between the legs. We're used to mapping out a midline from us in the front because we have these reference points. They're skeletal. We can see them. But not so often we are not familiar with mapping a midline that's also inclusive of us from behind. So as you see here, the back of the skull, going back through the spine, going back through the waist, all the way down to the gluteal cleft, okay, a very important landmark. The gluteal cleft, if you don't know, is where your buttock crack begins, going down through the tailbone and then continuing the line down. Now, the line, as most of you said, doesn't exist on the outside of us. It exists on the inside. But we need some point of reference. So we use these skeletal or bony landmarks or space, like space between one foot and the other, to help us understand what our midline is. Some people, the reason why I put these 5 up here is because these were they were unique, but they also started to touch upon about how the nervous system might sense midline. So I start here from the bottom, down here at the navel or the waist area. So people sensing midline, those of you, there's something there that is absolutely potent that the nervous system is reading. But also, when your body feels this kind of centeredness, it's not just the balance of the two sides of a right side and a left side. But several of you pointed out, it's also a balance from the front of you and the back of you. So there is this harmonious interface of a front to back, a side to side, and an up and down. So that midline is being registered all the way up and down in those 3, what we would call planes of motion. But I loved these top 3 because I think there's something about it that resonates with me, and I hope it does for you at the end of this presentation. Someone had said, it's neither a right or left, but it's neither a right or left, because when you're in the midline, You are you have a reference point of what's right and what's left. So I could be over here and still have a midline and still have a right or left, but the distance on my right or to the left is not equal. Now that's a little trippy, but stay with me and I'll show you how the nervous system is reading that. And someone else said how they define their midline is whether or not their head is straight. Okay, keep that in mind. And then I love this one. Something I would like to feel. I really like to know. I really like to sense my midline instead of just imaginary drawing the lines front to back. You know, what would it be like in there? What would this midline be? So let me share with you a little bit of how the nervous system is reading your midline. So here's what the nervous system is always listening to, receiving information into the center, to the brain, processing that information, and sending back out a response of either to press, to lift. It's quite amazing. So it is somewhat simple, not complicated. Complex, yes, but it's very simple. So here's what it's listening to. You see here on the screen, I asked this question, where is the center of mass? The nervous system wants to know that. Now, physiologically, I'm going to show you that on the model here in just a few minutes. But I want you to notice the sign that I made here. It's kind of a sphere. Okay, so sometimes we think of our center of mass as being sphere. Maybe that's helpful to you. But you notice these rays coming out of the center of mass? Now, these rays indicate that the center of mass has the potential to move. It can move right and left. Well, that makes sense. The center of mass can move up and forward, or it can move down and back. All right? It depends on what it is that you are doing. Okay? If you're just sitting still, like you are right now, your center of mass is not in motion. However, your center of mass may not be right in the middle. Okay? Hence, imprint. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. So if you are one of those people, and over 50% of the people said that they were sitting, of those who took the survey, those people said that they were sitting more on their left sit bone. Okay? They were off to the left. So there's something about that center of mass that the nervous system is reading off to the left. Now, the reason why these rays are important, and here's something that you may not know as a practitioner. Your center of mass can be caught, can be stuck, can be organized in such a way that it's always off to one side, it's always being held up and forward or down and back. It's the reason why you may not have as good a balance. It's the reason why you hear someone say, oh gosh, it's my entire right side. You know, it's the reason why you may end up having back pain or knee pain. It's because of where the center of mass is being held. Now, you think the nervous system is quite dynamic, so why would the nervous system hold that center of mass in one particular place? Well, it has to go to this next question that the nervous system is trying to assess. Where are our eyes? And I draw this horizontal line. Where your eyes are, we always try, it's a reflex, we always try to seek a horizontal or horizon line. It is why we see people when they're off to one side, all right, if they're sitting way too far off to one side, you see how my eyes and my head have changed? If I were to follow my body, I would end up here. My body, my brain does not like that. So it's going to do whatever it can to make sure the eyeballs stay at the horizon line. Your skull, your jaw, your neck, your torso, your pelvis, your legs, your ankles, all work together. Those were what we would call gates within gates. They all work together for the purpose of keeping those eyes at that horizon line. And your brain will sacrifice quality and quantity of motion or movement in order to make that happen. Okay? So the brain is listening to, the nervous system is listening to the relationship between the center of mass and the horizon line and one other thing. And that thing is, where is your base of support? Where is your base of support? Now, it's obvious when we think of base of support being down here at our feet, all right? So right now, the base of support is only off of this left foot. If you see me moving my pointer over here. The foot is going down into a trampoline, which causes an equal and opposite response of this foot here being lifted. So that is now only my base of support on a trampoline. But look at this lady right here. This is a typical yoga pose. We give this in physical therapy. We do a lot of things from this position. It's called quadruped, being on all fours. It's one of those developmental sequences. Okay? But look how the base of support off of this left knee, the base of support is not just the left knee, but if you could continue this out, it would be her lower leg. It would be her foot. And the other base of support is here, the imprint of her hand. So when you have such a base of support across and filling in this space, it's going to allow, the brain is going to allow movement in other places. And so you start to see that, look at this base of support on one hand. Now, the base of support over the hand, but also you see this hand here out to the side, that's also providing a base of support that you may not really think of, because base of support is where you're contacting in the ground, but your center of mass is being distributed across the surface area of your entire body. So think of it like that. And of course, this sweet little pose here, I think this may be a yoga pose. I don't think it's child pose, but kind of looks like child's pose to me. I think it might be called puppy or something like that. Maybe somebody in the chat can tell us. But you know, this pose right here, this gives us the most incredible surface area or contact. This little baby, this is my granddaughter here, she is absolutely supported. Absolutely. And her, I drew these little examples of the icon for center of gravity. You can see the center of gravity down by the gluteal cleft. The center of gravity is stacking up over the base of support. All right. But when you look at this picture here, ask yourself, where is the center of gravity when you are standing on one foot like that? Is it in the middle? Is it off to the right? Is it off to the left? Now, the nervous system itself is reading those three relationships all the time. In this example over here, what my nervous system would perceive as midline, the relationship between base of support, center of gravity, and your eyes at the horizon line, for me to lift this foot up, my center of gravity, my center of mass, maybe that might be a familiar term you have, would never be over to the right. Would never, because I would not be able to lift this from the ground if it was. That's how, even though I would want to, and I would consciously try to make my foot lift from the ground, If the center of mass, eyes, and base could not have a relationship with one another, the brain will say, sorry, oh, Carol, you will not be lifting that foot from the ground. So it's that important. So the midline that the nervous system is reading has to do with the most information from this imprint. So look at this young lady here. So can you see that her imprint, just, you don't even have to ask her, but visually you can probably start to guess where her imprint is. It's here on the left side. She's to the left, or more sitting on her left sit bone. How do we know that? Do you see what's happening here in the torso? You see the wrinkling of the clothing? Okay? So that starts to give us some clues. Even though looking straight on, her head is level, her shoulders look pretty level, don't you think? But something is happening down here in this base of support. If she was to reach out to the right side, she would have to do a lot of reorganization in order for her brain to make that safe to reach out. She will definitely be able to extend out to the left a lot further than she is to the right. So for instance, why don't you shift your weight into your left sit bone, right? However you want to do that. There's many ways to get there, some more optimal than others. But shift your weight so that you feel more of that imprint on the left. Now begin to reach out as far as you can. I'm moving right off the screen. And you can start to get a sense, because you're looking at your screen, you can start to see that your eyes, your head, your eyes, your center of gravity, your base of support is starting to line up. Okay? Come back. So did you feel how the weightedness came into that left sit bone? All right, come back to the center. Shift your weight into the left sit bone, whatever that means to you. Put the right arm out. Now, linger. Stay on that left sit bone and tell me how far you can start to reach. Now, if I try to stay on that left sit bone, you can start to see that I have to make some adjustments even in my head and my eyes to do that. But if I let my weight imprint more on the right, I can even get a further reach, right? So what I'm getting at here is that there's something about your imprint that can inform you as a practitioner, as a wellness provider, of what is happening not only personally to your center of gravity and mass, and how the nervous system is reading where is that? Where is that in relationship to movement? Because that's what the nervous system intrinsically and organically wants to do, is to bring us into movement. So let's take a look at this standing footprint. If you look closer at it, you're going to start to see that the toes, actually, it's interesting how the toes start to have a depth to them. All right, one versus the other. You can even start to see the ball of the foot is much wider, and that the absence of the middle of the foot, where the arch would be, is very gone over here. So the imprint of the foot is telling me that this person likes to bear more weight on their right side. All right? Now, again, 50% of you said you would prefer over here to the left. Now, I don't know if this has anything to do with handedness pattern, and that's one of the things I'm going to add to the assessment. Cynthia and I are collecting data to be able to make more informed decisions about a research that we are going to do around gait. So this information of handedness patterns certainly plays a role, but don't know if this person was a left-handed or not. I don't know anything that except that the nervous system says, you know what, we perceive that you are the safest and most in your midline of movement off to the right. Okay? So you have within you this, for sure, this imaginary line that we mapped out that you all front and back, you have it. But it's being able to move that physical, bony self tissue to one side, to the other, forward, back. There is a vertical axis and there is a horizontal axis. But the midline that the nervous system is reading is when the center of gravity, eyes, and base of support can translate through this arbitrary place of space and time. So I like to think that the nervous system's midline is awakened, turned on, available for us to move, just like the metaphor of air is all around you, right? Right now, you're watching this, air is all around you. We have space around us. We have a moment in time that we're speaking of. But air, like space and time, exist all around us. But when air enters the body, it becomes breath. It becomes breath because the nervous system knows what to do with that air. And there is not one cell, not one part of you that does not know what to do with that breath. It is out of your control. You can try to hold your breath, but you would faint and then you would start breathing again. All right? But you have influence. So, like air and space and time, when you enter space and time and want to move, this intrinsic drive to move, your nervous system already knows what to do with the midline, given the information of center of gravity, eyes, and base of support. It will move you based upon that relationship. So we influence that relationship. So the last part of that assessment and where we start to get into some of our somatic movement explorations. All right? We promised you a couple of movement explorations that would influence this concept of being able to use the seated position to translate it into a better walking. Okay? So I asked you about something about squeezing your glutes. You know, which glute was harder to squeeze than the other? Overwhelmingly, which I found this surprising too, was that almost 70% of you who took the survey said it was the left. The left just didn't seem quite as clear. It just wasn't as strong. It just wasn't as available. Okay? Now, what does something happening, organizing down here in the pelvis and the glute squeeze have to do with your ability to turn your head? I mean, that's quite a far distance. Your head and the tail, they're quite far away from one another. But your brain, right, is sorting on that relationship all the time. And then I asked you this question. You know, when you actually reached up as far as you could go comfortably in the arm, did you stay in the center? When the left arm goes up, do you go on to the left side? When the right hand went up, do you go on the right side? Are you just staying in the middle? All right. So the squeeze, the turn, the reach, are just fundamental assessments in being able to get a sense of what is going on in the nervous system's perception of your midline and the availability to walk. And not just walk one foot in front of the other, but how about walking with a little more comfort, more relief, so that every time I put weight through my right foot, my right knee doesn't hurt. Or, I don't feel like, gosh, I can only go so far and I need to sit down. Or this foot surgery that I had is really messing me up. I've got this neck pain and I can hardly turn around and see what's going on behind me if I want to check my blind spot in driving. So right now, scoot forward. If you're resting on your chair, scoot forward to your chair. And I want you to give a sense of where you're at right now in this moment. If we are going to take a look over the right shoulder, just a spot to see what it's like for you right now. And then check it to the left. And come back. Now, I want to invite something here. Most of the time when we go to look, we're looking to see how far we see behind us. That is absolutely an acceptable parameter. But I also want you to notice the quality. How smooth is it? How likely are you to go there? What's the comfort level? Where's the pinch? Where's the movement that you want to, I got to move something first in order to make that happen, right? The nervous system is reading that, not just the range, because it's going to try to see what it's going to see, but it's eavesdropping in on that range. Now, let's sit back in our chair for a moment. So let's go to squeezing the right, let's go to squeeze both glutes at the same time and then release. Squeeze the glutes and then release. Now, we're going to do that about 4 more times. And as you do that, there's a sense that you can squeeze the gluteal cleft as though that you're trying to stop yourself from having a bowel movement. All right? I'm not talking about that squeeze. Sometimes when people have that sense of squeezing the butt, they start to do something with their legs and with the bottom of their feet. Let it go. Let's go only to the right butt cheek. Okay? So we're going to start to squeeze the right and then let it go. And as you start to focus and you squeeze on the right, can you start to get a sense that there's a downward pressure? You're not making it happen. It could be a response for some of you that the footprint gets a little clearer on that right side. Something can start to happen. Maybe for some people it feels like it's in the arch. The knees are bent. Foot is standing on the floor. So if you're sitting too far back in your chair that, your feet can't touch the ground, that might make a difference for you. Couple more times. Do you get a sense? I wore this shirt for a very particular reason. Do you see how I'm wide here and it starts to narrow down? So I like to think of this width as my eyes. Okay? Now, obviously, you're looking at me on this screen, and this is one of the disadvantages of Zoom. But if you were allowed to let your eyes, which I will do, be carried over to the right of your screen and come back. Let your eyes be carried over to the right of the screen. Do you find that the squeeze of the glute is a little more available? or the left leg seems a little light. So we use this horizon line to yes, that's right, I see it. For some people, you use the line to translate over to that side. Now, I didn't say move your midline. I didn't say move your center of mass. But something has happened. I didn't say deepen the imprint on the sit bone. Good, let that go. Now, let's just see if that had any impact on the quality of turning to the right. Quality. Maybe quantity, but quality. And I'll watch you a couple times. Yes. I see that's a little different for some folks. So when the eyes start to turn, the horizontal line starts to turn. There could be a little shift. There you go. Okay. So now let's come over here to the other side. Let's see what we can do with that left glute, because a lot of people in standing, it just wasn't quite as available. Okay. So we'll start in sitting first. Come to squeeze whatever you consider the back side of your cheek. Sometimes I find that people, when they try to squeeze the glute, that this leg has been so held up that they're not used to letting it go down. Now, you keep squeezing, please. You're not consciously doing that, right? And I can't just consciously say, hey, Peggy, here's what I want you to do. I want you to push down into the ground. No. This is how the nervous system knows that it's acceptable and that you're not going to cheat it. This is not about shifting your weight into one side or another. That's artificial. The nervous system will not use that information. It'll just say, oh, she's shifting her weight over there. But it won't use it for a leg to stand on. It won't use it to get up those stairs. It won't use it to align the midline, the nervous system's midline for function. Okay? So this is not just about shifting weight. Okay. So sometimes when we really get a good grip into our glute, for some people the thigh falls out. Maybe that might be a little helpful for you. Let the knee, not the foot, just let the knee roll out just a little bit and try to squeeze the glute. All right? That might have been helpful. Now, if you keep the knee right in midline and try to squeeze the glute, the left glute again, you might find that that might give you spontaneously a side effect, if you will, of the foot pressing down, the left foot pressing down when you squeeze the glute. Interesting, isn't it? So I know I'm targeting a muscle even though the nervous system does not move muscles. I mean, obviously, it activates them. But the nervous system, the brain, moves in patterns, not in isolated muscles. The nervous system moves in patterns, not isolated muscles. Even though we are cognitively thinking about contracting, we're doing something else that invites a pattern. Let's check the range of motion. Turn, have a look over to the left, see what that's like. What's your quality? Interesting. Come back, do 2 squeezes. Squeeze on the left, release. Squeeze on the left, release. Now stand up. Feet in your natural position, whatever that is for you. And notice the imprint. about even. Can't tell, which is always a good answer, by the way. A little more on the left. A little more on the right. Could you squeeze that left butt cheek from that position in standing? You might find that it's actually, for some, a little bit easier to do because of the position of the thigh bone in the pelvis. The muscle's in a little bit of a shortened position, and it's more available to contract. Yes, there we go. Good. Now alternate. Left butt cheek, right butt cheek. Left butt cheek, right butt cheek. Now notice for yourself, and I start to see it with people, that there is just a small amount of sway from one side to the other side. Now when we walk, we do not squeeze our butt muscles intentionally. It happens. The end result is this sway from side to side. Good. Let it all go and sit down. Sit forward again. Let's do another intervention. Okay? So we just looked at the gait, that's G-A-T-E, the gait of the pelvis by doing these butt squeezes. Okay? We looked at the gait of pelvis and how that gait, getting access to that gait, opening it, giving it some opportunity is going to influence the G-A-I-T gait. Okay? So now I want to look at the gait that exists in the thoracic spine, that place at the base of your neck down to the middle of your back, below the brow line, below the shoulder blades. Okay? So we're going to start to investigate this area in here. So even though I'm talking about it from the back, it's influenced here in the front as well. So you sit to the forward place of your seat, and let's check your reach out before we start. Okay? Check your reach out. So I'm going to bring my hand up like I'm going to make a pledge. And then I'm going to start to slide the hand up towards the wall. I have people do that. I need to make sure I'm just checking the shoulder range of motion to make sure that it's available, because some folks don't have that motion. And we know that if that arm doesn't go up, we know relatively the center of mass going over to that side is going to be diminished. Just telling you right up front. Okay? So if you've got shoulder pain here, this is not about exceeding your limits. Just notice that, because what we're going to do might improve the quality of motion here, which then the nervous system can say, oh, it's available. Oh, we'll just move you right on over. And then you'll have a sense and change in function. So here we go. So this time I have like a little tray on my palm, and I'm going to push the tray as though I want to put it on a ceiling tile up. So I'm really going to reach up as far as I can and start to notice, do I land more on the same side sit bone or the opposite sit bone? Then I'll come down. And I only do this maybe, one or two repetitions. It doesn't take much. Again, this is the sensory information. I'm asking you as a client to be aware of it, but I'm certainly recording it. And believe me, the nervous system already just made an assessment for you. Okay, let's go to the other side. So I check my arm first. Okay, I check my availability to bring it up, which is I'm a little bit stiffer on this side. Okay, and now I've got my tray. I'm going to put my tray up on the ceiling. And I notice, the quality here is a little different. You may even, when you watch the replay, see how it changed this organization here in my shirt. Okay, so we got some assessment. Hand up the, we call this hand up the wall or hand up to the ceiling, is very much like using your head turn to assess the quality of your midline, your nervous system's midline. Okay, let's sit back in our chair. I'm resting my elbows on my chair. Okay. Now, I want you to imagine, I have this midline, which is, if I continue it up through the head, and I have the back of the chair, I can take the center of my back, my skull, I can slide my back over to one side. Let's just see if you can do that, right? You could go to the other side, right? This is shifting weight. Not a bad thing. I'm not saying that it's not a bad thing. But it's not, and the nervous system is listening to that, but it's not useful. All right? It's not useful. And why is it not useful? Carol, look at my eyes. I'm moving my eyes toward that direction. Why is that not useful? It looks like I'm really getting some movement here. But what's happening is, if you feel, it's almost like your base of support is shifting, right? It's not walking. Okay? That will not turn into walking. So how can we use that same movement pattern that you saw with the little baby that went to walking and the adult mirroring the baby to the adult? What is the movement pattern that they were doing? So when I sit back, now I'm going to move to this direction. As I start to move, my hands are on my lap or my belly, or maybe my hands are palm up. It depends upon your height of your armchair. But if I start to move in this direction, one of my forearms on this chair could give me some assistance. Is it going to be the left, the same arm that I'm going to, or will it be the other arm? What is it for you? Which arm has more capacity to generate power to actually glide you across? Where you're initiating the glide, maybe from this arm opposite of where you want to go. Yes, right there. And then, of course, if you let go of the pressing into the armchair, you'll come right back. And to start to slide again. So keep your back side, the entire surface area of your back, gliding across your chair. Keep it in contact. Keep it heavy. But initiate the push as though that you're pushing down into the forearm that allows the backside to run parallel to your chair. Yeah. And the next time you find yourself there, stay. And now I want to get back, not just back to where I began, but what can I do to get over to the other side of that chair? Can I start to push down? Can I push down in a way that with this arm that allows my torso to move away from it, as though I start to have a gap in between my armpit and the side of my trunk? Feel that gap. And now I find myself all the way over here. And strangely enough, when I'm all the way over here, check it out for yourself. Are you sitting more imprint on that sit bone on the side that has come all the way over? Okay, here we go. Let's send it back over. So pressing down and away with my arm that helps loosen, help glides my torso. Now some of you are still looking straight on at the camera. If you can allow your eyes to deviate from the center of the camera, we'll have poor, what do you call it? Poor camera ethic or ethics here. So, and then come across. Allow your eyes to travel across the screen. Good. And back and forth. Feel the gap that gets made, the folding. You may even start to see changes in my own shirt. Stop in the middle. Move forward. Let's see what the hand up to the ceiling is now, when we're going to start to reach. Okay? So I'm taking the position of the pledge. I have a little bit of a tray. I'm going to come up with it. What's that like? Now, the sit bone, the imprint, coming back. Try it a couple of times. Can you get a sense that as the arm starts to go up, there's something that happens? You can even start to see it with my shirt. There is some of that same kind of folding. Coming back down. This area, this thoracic gait, these ribs, try it on the other side. This is an area that is so often restricted, has lost its mobility. And then coming back down, try it a couple times on your own. When it loses its flexibility, its spontaneity to move, what happens is it dampens our reflexes of equilibrium and riding. It really starts to challenge us from being able to have the nervous system automatically respond if you get off balance to bringing you back upright. It's a real important move. So let it all go. So just to wrap up again, okay, what we've done here is I've given you some assessment tools. And the assessment tools is this quality of reference of what's imprinting. I used your sit bones because this talk was about using how can we transition and improve our walking from a seated position. And I also gave you the information of your footprint for in standing, okay, so that you can compare the two. But I also gave you the ability to be able to, which is more easy or to turn to the head to one side to the other. The easier the head turn, the more potent the glute squeeze will be on that side. And why would be that? No mystery there. It's because the center of mass is more able to be carried over the base of support. Base of support here in the seated position is your sit bones. So we're looked at an integral human gait concept of midline, what we all know and perceive it to be, and what the nervous system perceives midline to be. It's a little bit different than the line that we make. Certainly, the line that we made or that you said in your pre-assessment, what you perceived, yep, it does move from one side to the other, for sure. Now, the line is not straight. That's the only thing I would really want to open up in your awareness today. It's not straight like a stick. Sometimes it is, and that's during certain functions. But for the most part in walking, no. It is made to rotate and counter-rotate and side bend. Why? Because it is dedicated to keeping the eyes, center mass, and base of support available for your use. And so now the nervous system is doing it automatically. And so now maybe you can influence it consciously. And once you know that information, you share it with your client so that when a client gets in trouble, they really can't get the pose that they're looking for. You look at what happens with that center of mass. If the center of mass can't transfer, then maybe the thoracic gait or the pelvic gait might be their opening for a new experience and change and more pleasure. So, for right now, that's going to conclude my portion of what we did with the webinar. And in just a few seconds, I think Cynthia is
Hi.
listening in the background. Yep, there
Yeah,
you go.
there I am.
Here you are.
Hi.
Good.
Listen, how about you get up for a moment and just feel yourself in standing. So you get a chance to just feel yourself in standing. Maybe something feels different to you when you first come up to stand than use your normal standing, having done these explorations. And then take a full 1 minute break of walking around if you need to use the restroom, and then just come back in a minute. You'll hear my voice that is saying come back. Okay, and you can start to make your way back to your chairs, or however you'd like to sit, however you'd like to be. If you want to be standing, that's certainly fine. People are making their way back. You've been listening, of course, to Carol Montgomery, and I am Cynthia Allen. Carol Montgomery, Carol and I started working together in 2003, 2004, and along with another practitioner named Phyllis Evely, we started what is called the Integrative Learning Center, and it's a nonprofit organization. And we also found that within that, we wanted to collaborate on gait. In the beginning, that wasn't really where we were headed, but it turned out to be the primary thing that we've gradually moved towards over the last few years. And so I'd like to tell you a little bit about the opportunity that's coming up, and I'm going to screen share with you. And for those of you that are upset that you had the time wrong, there will be a replay of this, so we'll make it available. And you'll get an email about that, with probably not till tomorrow, but you'll get an email about it, so just watch for that. So let me share my screen here. Is that what I wanted? That is not what I wanted. This is what I wanted. Okay, so we've been talking about integral human gait theory, and then also Carol mentioned this title, Gait for Wild Human Potential, and that is the workshop series that's coming up that we'll be offering. It'll be 5 weeks long. It starts July 25th. Are you all seeing a screen with somebody kneeling? I'm seeing something's not right here. Let me stop this share and start again. I can see that something's not right. Let me try it again. We've been having a little trouble with screen shares today for some reason. That is still not behaving correctly. Okay, looks like it's working right, correct now. Okay. maybe. Yeah. So and this will be for 5 weeks. It'll be on Saturdays from July 25th to August 21st. It'll start at 9 a.m. and there'll be 2 p.m. to 2 p.m. And there will, of course, be some short breaks throughout, and then there'll be a 30-minute lunch break. And so what will you get in that? You're going to get this understanding of gaits within gait. You'll be connecting anatomy to movement to function. You're going to get lessons that come from Bones for Life, Feldenkrais, and then also lessons that are uniquely Carol's or mine. You will get recordings of the sessions that you can download and keep, and you get continuing education units for through the National Certification Board for Massage Therapy and Body Workers, or if you are in the Feldenkrais Guild of North America, you would get CEUs for that as well. And the learning objectives, we actually have a really stable and detailed set of learning objectives out for you on the website. And when we come back out of the screen share, I will put the website for this in your comments, and then we will also email the website for you as well. But I just wanted to just highlight how we're going to work with a whole body integration so that you are free to choose these healthy patterns. We're very interested in how the quality of walking becomes quality medicine, not just in the quantity of walking, but the quality of medicine. So Carol already started us today with this independent relationship between pressure, lift, and alignment. Just how does it work? What is it that even makes a foot press down, right? She kind of helped us find something interesting there about this. I sometimes call it the weight acceptance. What is it that makes this the weight available, the foot available to accept weight, the leg available to accept weight? And we'll get into details in both explanation and experience about the stance and the swing phase and where you can find neutrality through your whole system so this can be available to you. We'll go into the reorganizing power of counter rotation. Carol really started to get a little bit into this when she started to help you find this use of the arm. It's a kind of very beginning part of understanding counter rotation. So this way in which the girdles, the shoulder girdle and the upper ribs counter rotate to the pelvis and the lower ribs, and this freedom of your ribs so that you can begin to find this smooth and efficient pattern for walking. And then we also will look at the dynamic interaction between posture and gait. So what are those abdominals? Carol was certainly working with buttocks for today. What is the abdominals, the buttocks, the pelvic floor? What is that thoracic that she helps you start to give you a sense of today? And how those abdominals actually work to help you hold upright, help you be upright, not a crunch, but to be upright, not so much that you end up overdoing it, but upright. So the opportunity is to participate in this class. It's $497. We do have an available sliding fee scale. I'm sorry. We do have an available sliding fee scale, and it does include your CEUs, certificate, and an extensive, well-done PDF handout. I will say about the certificate, you do need to be attending live in order to get that certificate. So we are not set up to track your participation if you're not live. So you will go to, and I will put this in the comments so it's easier for you, this website, integrativelearningcenter.org/wild-gait-online-workshop. And if you register within 24 hours, you'll actually receive a private online session with Carol. And I wanted to say one more thing about this. I mentioned before that you're going to get 2 teachers. Where was it? Right. I took that out. So I will be teaching a little in this series, but I'm actually not teaching a lot. Most of you are getting enough of me at this point. A lot of you are in several classes with me. So you will have mostly Carol, and then you'll have me a bit. I'm going to just pop that link into the chat there for you. So hopefully that gives you some good idea of what you could expect coming up. And we're about half full already. So I expect that we'll fill up the rest of the way here fairly quickly. And of course, it starts fairly quickly, starts a week from today. So we're going to open up now. Everybody who registered prior today has been taken care of. If you registered within the first webinar in the time frame, you have a private session. So you're all taken care of, Beth. So what we want to do now is go to question and answers. And so you can have question and answers related to what Carol presented. You can have question and answers related to a patient or client that you're working with, or it could be your own situation, or it could be about the program itself. What we'd like to do is have you type those in the comments, please, because I think there'll be quite a lot of them. So if you could take some time to type them in the comments, and then we'll go through as many of them as we can. And in some cases, we might ask you to unmute yourself and explain it a little bit more. So just take your time for doing that. And then you can stay with us as long as you're interested today, as you find that it's not that interesting to you to keep going with us. You can leave and put the link here again. Somebody said it was not coming through to them. So there, Melissa, hopefully the link is there now. Okay, so Carol, Wendy asks, is the course for people with mobility difficulties or for teachers to teach clients?
Well, I don't, actually, I think it's mainly for teachers, but I should qualify this. And being a teacher and a person with mobility problems myself, I have not known anyone who doesn't have mobility problems. So it's actually for both. And the mobility problems that you think you have may not be actually a mobility problem at all. It may be more of a stability problem. And so other areas or gaits within your body become more stiff because they are trying to take up the slack or be more responsible for the parts of you that during the brain's midline of assessment are no longer available.
Yes, so I would just add that, you do need to be able to take care of yourself, and they're long days. And so sometimes people come and they try to do every single thing. I think that because of the longer days and the fact that we're not in the room with you, like we would be in a live workshop, that's the caveat for those of you who are signing up and you're doing it because you have a significant challenge. You will need to spend extra time to attend to yourself and make sure that in that attending to yourself that you take extra breaks and try less instead of more. And of course, we would remind you of these things. Jan asks, will you be teaching strategies that can assist people who have structural limitations, i.e. post-polio?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that lesson that Carol just gave you is totally for that person. Totally for that person, these things in the chair. But what else would you like to say for that, Carol?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I think that we commonly hear when comments about people who have taken the class is that they didn't realize that there were so many other options or entry points into one's physical body that could translate into function, because all they were seeing was the end result of the function. So this class, even though it's Gait for Human Potential, your walking is actually becomes a side effect. It improves. It's a positive side effect of improvement. So that's my additions to that. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what your background is, Jan, but if your background is to work with people, then I think that you'll be able to take material that even appear to be, maybe the material seems like it's more for a able-bodied person. I'm going to put that in quotes, in two-legged standing. I believe you would be able to take an awful lot of the material and adapt it for each individual client's needs. Mm-hmm. Marcelo asks, uh, she said, I feel, or he said, I'm not sure, they said, I feel more difficult. It feels it's more difficult to isolate the muscles in the buttocks, one from the ones in the thighs in standing than in the sitting position. I feel it's more difficult to isolate the muscles in the buttocks from the ones in the thighs in the standing than in the sitting position. It's not really
Hmm.
a question, it's an observation. Do you want to have a comment though there, Carol?
Absolutely. Something that I just said earlier in the presentation. The nervous system does not sort on isolating muscle contraction. You may put your brain there, you may put your mind and target, you may visually see, you may try to feel, but the brain is not just isolating the glutes. It moves, it fires, it processes an output in a pattern. So it is a normal, if I could say that, it's a optimal, perhaps better word, response of this sweetness between the glute and the quad working together. It's actually a wonderful observation.
Thank you. That was from Marcelo, and I see you now, Marcelo. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Uh, Amara, you mentioned the C7 in your intro to the course. Would you be able to elaborate on this in connection to gait?
Right. Okay. So C7, as we know, is at the base of the cervical spine, but it's also the top of the thoracic spine. So in gait, especially in its ability to walk, the C7 has to, or more optimally can be carried over and aligned over the base of support is a key component in allowing our equilibrium and righting reactions to take place. And here's why this is just more important than just like taking this top line over. Do you remember I said how the eyes have to align toward a horizon line? The upper part of your cervical spine is very different than the lower part of the cervical spine. The upper part of the cervical spine moves differently than the lower part. The lower part moves more like a thoracic spine, actually, when you look at it anatomically and biomechanically. So the fact that you can differentiate upper cervical mechanics, skull, upper cervical mechanics, upper cervical from lower cervical, that's the key in improving a quality of gait. Again, it's a side effect because the nervous system says, oh, these aren't all moving together as a group. They can actually differentiate, side bend, and rotate a little bit differently. And I think that's what we really call out in our day two and day four, this concept of rotation, counter rotation, and side bending. That's another great question.
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you to Beth for pointing out that position of the little baby. Baby Wren is her name. That is a version of puppy. So thank you.
Sean, by the way, I think you're the person who posted about your excitement on this workshop today on Facebook this morning. Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Maybe you'll even say something nice after it's over. He was already very excited. I found it difficult to contract the buttocks in sitting. Can you give me some direction as to how this could be easier?
Hmm. Hmm. Well, the first thing is to elevate the surface area that you're sitting on. Because let's take a look at this. When you think of the buttocks, so this red area would be the buttocks. It's coming down and attaching into here. So in the seated position, the buttocks itself, the muscle itself, is in a lengthened position. So when a muscle is in a lengthened position, it it doesn't have the sweet spot of contraction. It doesn't mean that it can't contract. It's just that when it is in standing or slightly in we call this thigh moving back. Now it's in a nice, sweet way to contract. It's the same concept you probably already know with your bicep. When the arm is all the way down, it's heavier to start to actually overcome and bring it up, but you feel stronger about 70 or 90 degrees. That's an easier way to contract rather than when it's long and extended. So simply just bring the buttocks, sit bones up a little bit so that the thigh bone is no longer at 90, it drops down to maybe 75, and you have a little more success. It's a quick one.
Thank you. Fran says, my schedule doesn't permit participation. Is it possible to purchase the resource material? No, not at this time. We have in our minds, we don't think these live sessions, this is not the kind of recordings we want to have for you to do independent study. So it's on our minds to make really high quality videos and lessons available, but it's not going to happen very soon. So it'll be down the line. Florence, sorry, having a little trouble here with my screen and my camera in conflict with each other, so I'm trying to dodge it. Says, what if you try to squeeze one glute and the other one wants to help? Can't seem to have the second one stay loose.
That is hard, isn't it? The nervous system is saying, what? What are you trying to do? Now, I just want you to know, I mean, this is the kind of nervous conversation I have with nervous system. The nervous system is saying, now look, Carol, my job is to keep this glute more informed because it is our choice that this is the safest place. So I know you want that other one to go, but let me tell you, I'm not going to let this go until I have confidence that this one can contract. No, it's saying, I'm not going to let this go until you give me some other information. So you know where I would go? I would go up, I would use what we have today. I would use the gait of the thoracic spine, increase mobility of the thoracic spine to be able to side bend, okay, be able to rotate, to turn, keeping your knees right where they are, right in front of you, work on rotation, work on side bending. Then what's happening there is you're starting, I can see some of you starting to move in the screen with that. What happens is it lets the nervous system know, oh, okay, we are available to take this center of mass over, and I'm going to let that contraction happen. Because what's going on is that the one that's not contracting is not just behaving badly or intently wrong or trying to sabotage you in some way. It's that it can't contract because its partner on the other side says, I've got this. And there's something within the nervous system that says, we call it a reciprocal inhibition. Okay, so it happens on the same side, it happens across the side. If one side is working harder, the other side is going to be inhibited from working because not needed.
Thank you. Ruth says, a client who is recovering from stroke walking now, but he or she has less connection through the right foot and is experiencing intense pain around the right hip. Suggestion, thoughts, please. The client's recovering from stroke, less connection, even though the person's walking, less connection through the right foot, and is experiencing intense pain around the right hip.
Boy, I can't relate to that person fully, but because of what I have recently been through, just a short, I've had to unexpectedly get a new left hip. Okay, so when you have a stroke, right? So the information that's coming down and available for output or processing, the tone that stabilizes the ball into the socket. If you look at that glute and these stabilizers, it is poor. It's like it has been taken offline. It's like it's not really available for contraction. So when you start then to take and you put weight through your foot, when you put weight through that foot and you don't have the ability for that center of mass to stack up over here because this is like gone in the image, then literally the ball and socket lose its congruency. Now look, we all have some level of degeneration that goes on. We may not even be aware of it, okay? And it's not until it becomes weight bearing or load bearing across the joint that the receptors say, oh, this is a problem. This is danger. Now, for someone who's lost that stability, this is the ball coming out of the socket. Now, that is an immediate threat to the nervous system that says, do not put. I know you want to get forward. I know you got to get to the bathroom, but I'm going to limit you how much weight you're going to put through here because I'm reading that that's not available to you. Somehow, this glute, this connection of the glute and the quad, this connection of glute, quad, and ankle mobility, which is very disrupted on that person that you're talking about. I can 99% think you might agree with me that they don't have a certain level of mobility in the ankle for the quad and the glute to fire together as a pattern. So you're looking for a pattern of movement. That's why that is so doggone painful. It's threatened. So they would do better with even if you're working with them, putting that knee on a stool so that you're walking on one leg and one stool, so that you're learning how to weight bear and activate the hip, trying to get something back more proximal. That might be of help to you. I hope.
Thanks. And just to clarify, she means the person would be standing and then the right knee, the actual right knee would be on a surface that would allow their pelvis to be fairly level. So one foot's on the ground, the knee is on a surface. So you're kind of taking out that ankle, the ankle that's got the stiffness, you're taking it out of the equation for the moment and seeing if they can get some sense of that glute by weight loading on that leg. Akiko says, I'd be interested in taking the course. Please tell us when the next one's available. We will absolutely do that. We'll put you're on the Integrative Learning Center's mail list now, which is different than Future Life Now. We don't put out a lot of emails on Integrative Learning Center. But when they are out, they're always worth opening and taking a look. So you'll be informed. Philip says, can fascia that is in its properties stiff, stuck, etc., limit the effectiveness of these routines that work via the nervous system? So if you've got fascia that's stuck and you have these ideas that you're bringing forward, Carol, is the stuckness of the fascia going to limit the responsiveness of the nervous system, is how I understand that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because fascia in its connection not only gives us support, but also offers lines of transference, right? So fascia is not just one area, but is covered over multiple layers in multiple directions, but serve as a biotensegrity capacity to allow movement in certain joints, in certain areas, or what we would call gates of the body, to be more mobile. So if those gates are not able to achieve their potential, then because of the fascia, it's going to restrict also the influence of where your center of mass is. And I said earlier that I would point out where center of mass is. That just kind of gives me a pause for just a moment. So when you look at the pelvis, We have the top of the pelvis is our waist, and then we have our pubic bone. This pelvis right now is tilted. Its orientation is tilted down so that the pubic bone looks like it's forward and down toward the ground. So the sit bones have changed. So if I bring this pelvis up to its anatomical orientation, or where we would love to actually approximate that as much as possible, this imaginary center of gravity is right in here. This area is called the sacrum, which is that triangle bone where these two ears of the pelvis hook together. And right in here in front of they're labeled in numbers. S stands for sacrum, that's triangle bone, and it has levels just like the lumbar has 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The sacrum has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It goes down this direction, and it's somewhere in here about S2. Okay, so it's invisible. You can't touch it. So it's sitting in there, being able. It's kind of like one of those games where the ball can move in any direction. It doesn't get stuck.
Edith asks, how about with people with stenosis and scoliosis?
Mm.
How about, does it work? Does this approach work with people with, is what I understand, people with stenosis and scoliosis?
Let's talk scoliosis first, because I just had a client on Thursday come in, pretty bad scoliosis, and been getting chiropractic care, maintenance care 3 times a month, and just continually feeling tight and losing function. She really can't see to drive very much at all. So you can imagine that when the pelvis is in a tilt, right? So when she sits down, she is clearly on one sit bone more than the other. All right. And her scoliosis is not just through like the arcing of the lumbar spine, but then it goes on to the thoracic spine, and then it continues up past that C7 into the lower cervical spine. And then the head itself has to counter rotate or counter tilt to that. So this scoliosis goes all the way up. Okay. So now I'm not just going to use this information of Imprint or use the information of these gaits to say, you know what, we need to get you weight bearing more on your other sit bone. What we have to do is, in order for someone to change how they're sitting or how they're going to walk, you have to change concurrently the gaits. And some of them, one of her major gaits that I changed was down in her ankle, okay? In a seated position. Something that we did in the seated position using a yoga strap that made the difference for her in changing this balance. The second thing we did is something I did here in the head. All right? And so we expose you, I guess is a better way of saying that, to these different somatic movement explorations so that you're able to change globally, not just locally. But what happens is when you start to change some key local areas, then regionally you start to have a different influence because of the interdependence of these gaits. And then globally you see the change in function. So that's like with stenosis. Now let's with scoliosis, let's take stenosis. So stenosis is, as you know, that narrowing, and it comes up through the cord. The cord is being, the nerves that pass through the cord are being pinched. There's extra bony material there. All right. There, you can have stenosis along the sides of the vertebra too. So where the two vertebrae stack up in the nerve, so you can have some stenosis going on there too. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to expand or open the capability of the vertebra or that hole to its best capacity. You don't, we can't get rid of stenosis, right? But there are a lot of people walking around who have stenosis who don't have symptoms of it yet. So what if you could change the areas that caused the stenosis to happen in the first place? People who have stenosis are typically limited in their ability of their hip and their ankle. They're limited in their hip, their ankle, and of course the thoracic spine. So what if you could change those three areas? What if you could change those three areas that would somehow decompress the lumbar spine in such a way that it would no longer cause that pinching, that would no longer, or at least reduce it 50%, at least allow them to walk longer, you know, maybe even get to beyond the bathroom, but get to the grocery store and back before they had their stenotic symptoms. That that that's a change in life. That's a wild potential for them. So that's
Absolutely.
how we would work it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think maybe also just to clarify or add about what the program is. So the program is really delving into the theory of integral human gait. And then we explore it and give you an experience of it through a variety of kinds of lessons. If you are not a Feldenkrais or Bones for Life teacher, or your background isn't somatics, for example, let's say you're a physical therapist or you're a massage therapist. I mean, it's not that you can't take what we're teaching you and try to use it with people and you will get effective results. Absolutely, you can do that. But we're more hoping for you that you will have such clarity about it that you can translate the theory into your field of practice. So we're not trying to make you we're not trying to take a massage therapist and make you a Feldenkrais teacher. We're not trying to take a personal trainer and make you a Feldenkrais teacher. We think we'll influence you for sure with some qualities of how we explore. But what's more important is that in your own field of study, you now have a theory to place it against and go, hey, when I'm choosing my exercises that I'm going to do with this person, I'm going to choose ones that focus on X, Y, Z, and I'm going to tweak them a little bit because I see now that the way I've been doing them was not very multidimensional. It was not really thinking about the in function of gait around which just about everything else in human function is built. So just to add that as a piece, I think it's important for people to wonder what the heck they're going to get if you're a practitioner in another field. Karen asks, would this apply to someone with a spinal cord injury, C4, I, so I think this is for herself, I can walk with canes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So obviously, when you have a spinal cord insult, the there can be information that's coming into the nervous system that's altered, right? And you can also, then there's the processing in the brain. The brain is fine. The brain is fine, but it's the information coming in, and based upon that information coming in, the brain's output is not being able to reach the target, correct? We think about as a simple in and out to the target. So your brain remembers the pattern of walking. Your brain remembers the pattern of walking. You're actually born with it, believe it or not. You come in with it. At least this is what science, some research, current research is showing us. All right, and I'll talk about that a little in the class, but it's actually already in there. So any time that you can give the clearest feedback into the brain, you have a chance to have a better output. So if your target tissue isn't available, like you won't have the glutes to use in the way that we do, but you absolutely have the ability to move the torso so that you may not have the finesse of how the ankle moves or how the knee moves. You might have to have those braces, right? But you're able to move the torso in such a way that maybe walking with the sticks, with the assistive device, becomes a little bit less more um, painful, or over time you're not just getting calluses here, but you're not then causing the stenosis and increased load up here, which then is going to dampen even further the spinal cord issue. So I think it has value. I think it has merit. Um, I have two clients who are spinal cord injured, um, and they do pretty good.
Thank you. Thanks for that question. Julia, I need you to ask your question again because I don't know what the ditto to that question than someone with one eye. I get that there's something about the one eye, but I don't understand the rest. That's the reference. If you could ask it again now, that would be helpful. Yeah, stenosis and scoliosis, these are big issues, aren't they, Tony? Amira says, thank you, absolutely fascinating. So they're weekly. Yes, they're weekly. It's 5 sessions, Amira. And Freddie said her glutes have now changed. The difficult side becomes easier after contracting during a lesson. Fabulous. That's wonderful. Mike says, Carol keeps talking about the thoracic, but looks to me like it is more lumbar spine. Michael, can you say in the comments when you mean what is more lumbar spine? What is more lumbar spine? I'm not quite understanding that. And we'll come back to that then. Katerina said it really made me think, and my glutes think, and great presentation, thanks. Ewan says, where can I get a model skeleton that will stand up to abuse by the grandchildren? You know, the highest quality skeletons that I have seen are, what is the name of the group, Carol, that sells all the anatomical supplies? So you're talking about getting into the higher range. Why is my mind a blank there? I can't think of the name of them, but I see you a lot, Ewan, so when I think of it, I will tell you. So you can definitely get these skeletons very similar to what Carol has. I mean, they could still take the screws off and discombobulate it, but it would pretty much stand up to most things. Mary says, suggestions for tightness in the left hip flexor and pelvis while walking, perhaps a tight psoas muscle and an old torn hamstring injury.
Well, you know, that psoas muscle gets blamed for a lot, and it has multi-dimensional components to it and function. You know, I think of the psoas muscle actually is a part of the diaphragm, and the diaphragm is a part of the psoas muscle because of its origins and how it is connected in the front of the body. Now, think about it this way: if you said you had an old hamstring tear, right? So the psoas muscle, as you probably already know, is going to attach like way down here, close to the actual hip joint itself, okay? And it then cascades up just like this, okay? Now, the hamstring, interesting enough, is attaching here on the sit bone, all right? And quite an expansive array on the sit bone, and it has 3 components to it, and it's coming down the thigh. So let's remember, we talk about there's a midline. Someone mentioned this in their assessment. There's a midline, not just that goes down the middle, but there's a midline in every joint. There's a sweet spot in every joint. So there's a front to back, a side to side, and an up and down. So let's say you disrupt the integrity of the hamstring on the back, all right? The partner to that hamstring, especially close here, has to be coming up this way, right? It's the psoas muscle. Now, obviously, here, the quad muscle, there's part of the quad that comes up here, but you're looking at things that cross these two joints and what the hamstring does in the back, the rectus does in the front, and so does the psoas. So your rectus and psoas can actually be both tight, but the nervous system is not stupid. You see, the nervous system, an injury gives us information into the nervous system, and the nervous system uses that information as a reference point that says, problem. We're going to try and heal that. And while we do that, we're going to put a compensation in place in order to keep you moving forward. Sometimes the compensation outlives its usefulness. All right. And the quality of running that pattern from the brain coming down still is going on and on and on. It becomes a habit. But the habit can't change unless the information from behind can have a different information input. So there's something about this chronic tightness. If you try to stretch this out, the nervous system is so potent. Remember, we influence it. We influence it. I'm not saying that stretching is not appropriate or that it's bad, but sometimes that tightness is needed in order to keep something else in integrity, in order to keep this reference point that the nervous system has developed over time to keep you in balance. So there's some other changes that have to happen before you start actually going to town and doing all the wonderful stretches. So you're someone who would be benefit from working in the different developmental positions, which is something we do throughout the class too. So not everything is done in sitting or lying down. We start to change what it's like to take less support away from you, gain more support, more surface area, more base of support. Maybe that's a better way of saying it. So working in different positions can start to change this. So it's not until the brain reads, oh, hamstring. Oh, there you are. Oh, okay, you can work. If the hamstring is not going to work, why would this ever get long? The nervous system will say, sorry, we're going to use that. So hope that's helpful.
Thank you. And I think this actually relates. Tanya says, if the nervous system reacts to loss of balance, for example, it seems it must have information on what is the most neutral, the easiest, there where you don't have to work so hard to stay erect. But for that to happen in the quotes best way, in quotes, what if someone's nervous system only had, in quotes, incorrect information to base its reference on? How to change the nervous system's reference to recognize a new neutral compared to before.
Absolutely. That is what fundamentally, that last part of that statement is absolutely what we're doing. Changing the nervous system's perception or reference, giving the nervous system more information so that when it processes a response, it has a more access to other areas of the body that can keep us upright. In a later class that we've developed in looking at Integral Human Gait and balance and riding reflexes and equilibrium, if the nervous system doesn't have access to this balance between mobility and motor control or stability between the local and regional gaits, their interdependence, if it doesn't have access to that, it's still going to do its best job of keeping the eyes toward the horizon line, the center of base, as clean as it can and still try to give you some motion. It's always going to try that. But what happens is the more and more compensation, the narrow the response becomes. And so a person, doesn't take much for a person to fall over or to walk along and hit the side of the wall and to easily get off balance and they can't recover. If remember early on when I asked you to shift your weight into the left and I asked you to reach and you could feel your imprint and you could see that there was like a change in the thoracic spine, the change in something in my torso. Maybe you couldn't see it thoracic, but change in my torso. And I ask you to go here. Now, if this side of my gait or thoracic spine can't change, then the further I go over here, I can't correct and be balanced. I will fall over. I will be lowering to the ground. I will fall over. So that's when we start to change that reference point of the nervous system. It's like we are giving the ability of the nervous system's concept of midline to be a little bit more plastic. It has accessibility to those, and people's balance gets better. Absolutely gets better. And we're not even working on balance yet. We're not working on one-legged standing or challenges. We're not working on changing the surface area underneath them. We haven't even done that yet. That's at a higher level. So that's a really good comment. Thank you again for that.
Yeah, and that how is because the nervous system, I mean, every nervous system wants to have an upgrade. I mean, it doesn't know it could upgrade. It doesn't know it could upgrade until it has the experience of the upgrade. But once it has the experience of the upgrade, it will want to go in that direction. And the more the upgrade incorporates the entire rest of the body, the more usable it is. The more usable it is. So that's what's
Wonderful.
really important is most of the time we're treating it with a very piecemeal kind of way. I know a couple people are hanging out in here that I see from the Better Back program that I'm doing too. And so we have somebody who in the Better Back program who actually is a physician, and he has been having a heck of a time with his back, and he does not bear low weight bear into a particular leg. His pelvis, his thoracic is not available. And so I did a little something with him. And a week and a half later, he says, my gosh, I'm still in that leg. I'm still feel my ability to have some strength there. So it was a 30-minute lesson that incorporated enough of the rest of his body that a week and a half later, his nervous system is still saying, this is an upgrade and I'm keeping it. If I get all possible, I'm going to keep it. Now, he may slide out of it, but he'll be able to find his way back again more quickly.
Right.
Okay, so there is certainly, when stressors come up, we will tend to go back in our repertoire, and it's usually a regression. It's not usually higher. It's usually go back a regression, but he will be able to find it back more easily. Yes, Beth, we love you too, and we're so excited to have you back. Beth started with me in Bones for Life a while back, and yeah, it'll be fun for you to be with Carol in this program. Florence, you have a great way of explaining things. Thanks so much. I can't do the course, but this is an exceptional gift. And Carol, she's wishing you good luck in your continued healing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And
It's, you know, going through this process, I always try to practice what I preach and take the same medicine that I offer out to other people and all the good things that I have learned and put together. And so going through this experience, I've learned how to titrate a little bit more and how to pace it. And so I think teaching this class online will probably, I think, going to be one of my best classes yet, Cynthia, because I'm
No, you've
seeing.
never said that before.
Yeah,
I never heard you say
I
that
know.
word.
Every time I teach this class, it's like I get so excited because I got more clarity now. This is even better. But I really have a lot more clarity now, and I know what it's like to kind of finesse and be able to have the somatic principle properties that we try to bring to the class. So it's a sweetness. So. And Cynthia, I just want to say, I love that language of the upgrade. I don't know if you guys like that, but the nervous system is always seeking an upgrade. That is so true. That was really a sweet moment there.
Oh, good. Marina says, I have a client with MS with a dropped foot. What can I do for her?
Ah,
Oh, Beth, how did you figure out how to do that little thumbs up thing? You know something I don't even know. Do you all see that on Beth? Beth, she's on. You took it back off now. Oh, it was there, now it's gone. I never saw that little.
oh,
Oh
you
gosh, you
see that?
guys, I've never seen that. Freddie knows how to do it too. Oh, see, look, I've got to go learn it now. That's pretty cool.
Wow.
Okay, let's see. I have a client with MS with a dropped foot. What can I do for her? Marina.
All right. As you've heard me say before, that ankle mobility super important. Okay. So during the walking process, if that foot is really dropped, then there's needs to be some kind of assist or support that just brings it up just a little so that when it comes through the air and when it lands, that it's not always landing in ball heel position. Okay? When you're in that ball heel position, that will not speak to the brain that it's in available to load weight through that ankle. Okay, so if there's anything that you can support, sometimes kinesiotaping helps, sometimes there's different actual support wraps out there, and even bracing. But one of the things that I've found, if let's just take this same lesson we did, okay, because you're familiar with that. If you put their feet on a wedge, okay, like I have styrofoam wedges. So if I slide a styrofoam wedge, or it could be a three-ring notebook, you could have that if you want to, something that won't, and you put some kind of surface material on it, like something that you line cupboards with that doesn't allow dishes to move. I use that a lot in treatment so that there's no slippage, either slippage of the wedge cushion or slippage of the foot on the wedge. Then you start to do this movement of just butt squeezes from side to side, or you start to use this motion that we did, okay? You exaggerate the foot pushing when it's on that wedge. So the wedge starts to feed in information that, oh, that's been absent for a little while. The information coming in with the foot flexed at that angle, which is what we need when we weight bear, has been absent. It's like in the gait class, we talk about something of self-image. And so I really want to map out for you a little bit more of what self-image means to the nervous system. Not just how we perceive ourselves, not just from an emotion or a mental aspect, but from that physical aspect. When you're not getting that proprioceptive input into a certain area of a joint, it doesn't light up within the nervous system. If it's not lighting up in the nervous system's self-image, it won't be available to you. So do something that allows the bend of the ankle to be available and that allows movement through that ankle while it's flexed. Hope that's helpful.
That's nice. Amira, you ladies are truly magnificent, so knowledgeable, generous, wise, graceful. Thank you, thank you,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Thank you, Amira. Um, and Lynn says, is this course appropriate for the non-practitioner? The answer is it is oriented towards practitioners. We have are fine if you come as your non-practitioner. You get a lot out of it. you do need to be able to take care of yourself and monitor yourself. So we want to stress that.
Mm-hmm.
Marcus, thank you for the somatic exploration. I've learned something, and I'm sending everyone here love and light. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
I'm going to receive that. Pippa, thank you for the useful course. I got to leave. Ruth, thank you for the ideas that you gave her for her client. And let's see, Bonnie, thoughts on how this would affect walking speed, considering the research on how walking pace is a predictor of healthy and active longevity rather than just longevity.
Love that one. Okay, so walking slowly, right? The slower you walk, the more organized the nervous system has to be. All right, there's no cheating because you're going to spend a longer time on that leg. Now, the faster you walk, you move from being in a there's some people where when we're walking, there's a time where we're actually only on one leg, but in running with this, I don't want to use running. So the faster we go, the poorer you are in alignment, the more you're going to, I want to say, contribute to a gait that's dysfunction. So if your gait is dysfunction at a slower speed, just speeding it up doesn't mean that it will be any better. You might be able to cover more distance. You certainly are going to impact the circulatory system, the respiratory system, the digestive system, but the musculoskeletal system, I would still be worried about. So Cynthia talked about quality walking, all right? So whether you're moving slow or fast, the quality of walking makes the difference, not the quantity, not the distance covered, right? Those have impact on other systems within our whole self. But if we're really trying to integrate our whole self, we want the best possible response from our reflexes and also from our musculoskeletal health at all local joints to be available to us so we're not wearing out our hips. We're not wearing out a shoulder. We're not contributing to that stenosis. Okay?
Thank you. Michael's comment earlier was, Carol, you keep saying thoracic, but I feel it's more lumbar. And he says the clarification is just that he feels the movement is more lumbar.
Movement is more lumbar. You know, it's interesting. In one of the things we like to do in the class is we look at what you are anatomically, skeletally, and the biomechanics. So there is a reason why we do everything that we do in the class. So we allow time for you to, and we have it written down for you as well. We allow time for you to understand why it would matter for you functionally and what are the biomechanical implications. So in the lumbar spine, I really take the time to map out what's different in the lumbar and what's different in the thoracic. The architecture is very different. So in how far up the lumbar go is very surprising, actually, when you actually feel it on yourself and see it from a model perspective. So no doubt that you may be feeling it in the lumbar, but the side bending component of the lumbar is very limiting, I should say. Not as much as rotation is limited in the lumbar, but the side bending component. So that higher lumbar area, like 2 and 1, and the lower thoracic, they behave very similarly, but the architecture is different. So interesting.
Julia had said above that it was ditto related to the scoliosis and stenosis. She presumes someone with vision in one eye only will have imbalance too. Yeah, for sure.
Well, Well, actually, we had a participant who was blind in one eye at the gait class in out west, and she eventually demonstrated those things as you had just mentioned. Thank you. And she did end up coming out to Indiana. This is where I am right now. And she came out for some personal sessions. Again, being able to use some of these same principles that the interventions that she had in class, but she couldn't have access, full access to them because there's something else that goes on in the nervous system, which I start to allude to and talk to, and it's called the protective reflex. And we talk about it from a perspective of the nervous system is so sharp that it's reading when it senses pain or when it senses something is not available. It's going to protect you in such a way that actually you actually recoil is the best word I can describe. And so that you can keep this recoiled position in the nervous system and it can be held there. It influences, as you know, center of mass or center of gravity. So when you are being held in a certain place and not being able to move, it's usually because the protective reflex is either continually being elicited or that there's something happened within the structures themselves, like we talked about earlier about this fascia being too stiff, the architecture of the bones not have extra bony growth there and not being able to move. So there's all sorts of reasoning behind that. But the one eye, the change in not being able to track across the screen, this becomes, if my eye was blind, this doesn't have as much availability to me. But I'm telling you, this woman was able to rid herself of horrible back pain and be able to walk, and she only had one eye. And then, tragic story, but she's better now. So she leaves, and probably a year later, maybe a year later, she ends up having a detached retina on the other, and has to and goes blind, and has to travel and has some surgery, and now thankfully she's doing well, but she's gone back through her program and just through some of these somatic movement explorations and come back to being functional again. So it's a wonderful success story, I guess. So it's possible.
You, and if you missed it, there's lots of comments on where you can buy skeletons in the comments. Louisa says, I have a client that suffers from quad equina. I feel this will be great for her, the glute activation.
Okay. Wow. Okay. I'm a physical therapist. So, and I had a client, still do, um, and she had the symptoms of quad equina, severe scoliosis, and I've worked with her for years. She would come in for tune-ups. She would apply these principles. She transitioned from being dependent on opiates and on disability to going back into the field of nursing and moving into the field of hospice and being a manager of hospice. So she was able, it was another lovely success story. But as she moved, and this is someone who has since her young years been challenged with scoliosis and fractures and rods breaking. She was so unstable. So someone who has cauda equina is something to take very serious, and it's more than just not being able to activate your glutes. It's helpful for sure, don't get me wrong, but I want you to be mindful also that there is a hierarchy. Cynthia talks about being able to take care of yourself and to be able to take care of your clients, but when you start to lose bowel, bladder control, these things, as they indicate the level of severity of the cauda equina, this is not a cure-all for a diagnosis. Okay, so I just want you to be mindful of that. Helpful, yes, but on one sense, my 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 background tells me please be mindful of what you're going to do, and that it's not about causing more destability in certain areas. So,
Thank you, Carol.
yeah.
Allison says, does walking with walking sticks help or hinder gait? I'll just take that one. For almost everybody, as long as they're using them in a pattern that walking sticks are meant to be used in, will be highly helpful. You can get a better upper back workout, thoracic workout, upper back with it. You can increase the amount of walking, often offload stress in the lumbar spine and sometimes the knees. If you have a pattern that you're trying to upgrade, you can use walking sticks to give an extra stability and really play with the patterns in a way that you can't do when you don't have them. So overall, I would say for the vast majority of people, they're helpful. And that is even healthy people that consider themselves healthy. They're very helpful. Some people do start using them more like canes, and that's not so helpful. They're not good canes. They're not stable enough to be canes. If you're leaning your weight on them, it's dangerous. So I don't think it's appropriate for every single person. And some people, when I say canes, I don't just mean lean on them, but they're way out in front of them. And that's not the point of a walking stick. So there's a way to use them that's helpful more than not. So lots of gratitude from people. I've got the link to the course several times in the chat. Someone's asking how to become a practitioner with us, that we treat people in a greater way. We don't have a track for that at this point. We've had some discussion about it, gone back and forth, but that's not an available track with us at this point. We are starting to develop a series of courses. We've been really exploring Gait for Wild Human Potential and a lot of material in that course for over 10 years now. And we realize when we look at everything we've been teaching that it really could be broken out into several courses and paced probably differently. So that's what Carol was saying. We've got a course coming up on protective reflexes and balance. So that would be like course 2. And we're slowly developing a series for it. So lots more skeletons, the link, people have to go. Let's see, let me find here. I think there was still a couple more questions. Thank you for BOS and COG and eye level. How does fibromyalgia influence, Linda asks, how does fibromyalgia influence the nervous system's ability to listen and respond?
Mm-hmm. Well, I know of several studies that people who have fibromyalgia, they do not reach their potential of using their pelvic girdle and their hip musculature. They are actually walking a lot more with just straightening and bending the knee, and their transfer of the center of mass is markedly reduced. So there's that. And then there's another school of looking at the base of the skull and how the skull sits on the head. And people who have fibromyalgia seem to have a really tight connection there, beyond just a tight muscle, but more of a compressive, so that they lose their ability to differentiate the skull on the upper cervical, and the upper cervical and the lower cervical can't differentiate a lot. So when we have someone who has fibromyalgia, or anyone who had those areas of gaits or those areas or locations anatomically that don't feed information into the brain, if the brain does not get a certain level of proprioceptive information. It can not process what it is it needs to process to give you the best outcome for that situation. So people with fibromyalgia, we try to look at them from two aspects. One is just how we look at any human being, because that's who they are. They're just the same as the rest of us. It's just that they may have an explosion of a chemical irritant and factor inside the nervous system that needs to cause more of an inflammatory response and a hurt all over. So they still get better in their function when they improve those areas that are most restricted. So,
Thank you, TM Mulligan. How soon will the recording after the Saturday class will they be available? We say allow a full 24 hours. So usually we can get it done within 24 hours. It's quite a little laborsome process. So we're not going to promise anything more than that. And so if you aren't going to be able to make it to class, you should wait 24 hours before you think you should be getting an email from us before you start saying, where's my email? Thanks for the lesson on where to find those reactions. And let's see, somebody wanted to know if there is a way to get private sessions. I know I'm not doing them. Carol, are you taking private sessions online right now?
yes, I am. I am. And
So when
online or in person, did you say?
online,
Yes, online. Yeah.
it's online.
We do online.
Carol, what is your email address that they can email you?
Sure. It's Montgomery somatics at gmail.com.
Okay, we're getting close here to
Can
the.
I put that in the chat?
Yeah, that would be good.
Let me
Thank you.
do that.
Georgia asks, what about myopathy? Can this kind of work help change wrong patterns in walking because of muscle weakness and imbalances? And she had wrong in quotes. Myopathy.
Did she say myopathy or neuropathy?
myopathy.
Okay. So with myopathy, so the nerves that are going to the muscle are the muscle's not able to actualize its own contractile properties. Okay, so the muscle itself could be in a state of disease, or the nerves going to the contractile tissue that cause it be in a state of disease and not being able to activate. So when you don't have muscular, and usually it's scattered, all right? So it's not the capacity of the entire like quadricep. This is where I see it the most in the quadricep, where there is parts of the quad is absolutely not just atrophied as a whole, but a section of a fiber track is like literally gone, like sunken in. I don't know if that's what you're referring to or not, but I'm going to take it from that perspective and you can help give me a little bit more information. So if you don't have the full capacity of that muscular component, then the nervous system can only take what it can take. And it's going to have to rely on somebody else, I should say, or some other parts of you within the pattern. And that's what the beauty of function is. Function is not in isolation, it's in patterns. So the more pattern you have available throughout that region, the better response that you can have. Will it be perfect? Will you have less effort? Yes. Doesn't mean that it'll be easier, but it won't be, I should say, it'll have more ease, but it won't be easier. You still have to move up against gravity, the bottom line. And so the best of the interdependence of the parts of you that can make that happen, even in the face of myopathy, the better chance you have in making it more pleasurable or a better relief for you. less degenerative changes go on, less compression.
Thanks, Beth, for putting Carol's email address in the comments for us. And no, Diana, there's so many Feldenkrais practitioners in Toronto. I will just say, and absolutely go seek one out and see one, that I do want to say that what we're teaching in this class, a lot of Feldenkrais practitioners would not know. So this is not a Feldenkrais class. This is a class in Integral Human Gait theory that Carol and I developed. And we use the Feldenkrais method to apply the principles of it. We use Bones for Life, we use other things, but this is not a Feldenkrais class, and most Feldenkrais practitioners would not know quite a lot of the information that we share in the class. So just not to confuse the two things. They're compatible for sure, compatible. And this is going to be the last one we're going to take here. It's going to be Claire. She says, thank you for the wonderful presentation. Mind-opening, clear notions of availability or usefulness for the nervous system is fascinating. I loved the exercises and oddly felt quite tired right after. A bit sore, but mostly mentally tired, probably as my nervous system had some unexpected insights from the exercises and needed some processing time. I'm thinking about the approaches. It might be related to the discipline of posturology, which is quite popular in France and Quebec, but the somatic component in your approach makes it a lot more clear and usable. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Claire, for sharing that. You want to say anything about that, Carol, or as we wrap up?
I just think, love that. Absolutely. I appreciate that share. One, no, I don't. I want to just leave it at that because it's just so, that's just beautiful. You
It's a
know,
beautiful share,
it's
isn't it? Yeah.
just beautiful. Doesn't need, yeah.
Yes,
Sweet.
so thank you, lovely, lovely people who continue to hang out right to the end with us. My gosh, there's quite a lot of you still here. We appreciate it. Your enthusiasm, your desire to learn is lovely. So that we continue to build community with each other, please take a moment to give a high five to the person right in front of you, which might be me or Carol, and then give a high five to the persons above you and to the sides and to below and to whoever. And we are very glad to have you join us. Thanks so much. And we look forward to seeing you in the course if possible.
Thank you.
Bye-bye all.
Appreciate everyone. Bye-bye.